Hello, my name is Brian, and I'm a physics education researcher. As part of my job, I frequently have to design research surveys. And it turns out designing surveys is actually kind of challenging because you might not get the information you're looking for. Like, depending on how you craft the questions, you might actually be getting a different stream of information than what you intended. And so I'm always fascinated when I get asked to complete surveys like this one from the Heritage Foundation, because I'm always curious, how have they implemented good survey design principles? If you're not familiar with this organization, the Heritage Foundation crafted Project 2025, which was a set of instructions they created for the current United States president to follow. The reason they created this plan is they realized that after he was elected previously, he kind of had no idea what he was doing. He showed up to the White House with his family and said, "Who is that person? What is that office? What does that thing do?" And the very first part of his first term was very ineffective because he hadn't really been oriented to what the job of the president was. And so they said, "Oh, I know how to fix this. We're going to make a plan for him that he's going to follow." And they were very open about this in the run up to the 2024 election, that this was the plan that he was going to be following. And here they have a more or less a satisfaction survey with how that's going, or what people would like to see happen next. And so I'm going to go through this. I've read this briefly. I have an idea of how long it is, but I haven't really applied my education research eye fully to it. So this is more or less a live feedback reaction to the survey. But again, I'm going to be talking through how they've applied survey design principles to this survey. So the first thing we're going to do is Control Plus to increase the font size, because I believe in accessibility for my viewers. Let's see, the Heritage Foundation acronym survey. With the administration's, already we have an issue because this thing that is named here is not a department. Departments must go through the congressional process to be created. And so already the use of the term department here is a bit misleading in the context statement. But making massive cuts to the federal government. Already a bit vague, isn't it? What does it mean to cut one's government? Because what they've really been doing is canceling contracts, and in some cases canceling contracts that have already been awarded. So already we're a bit vague in the context, right? Our country has a unique opportunity to rein in the federal government's out of control spending. Okay, so we've got a context here that already kind of carries with it a conclusion. So when you design a survey, you don't want to give the reader or the respondent the conclusion that you're trying to reach, right? Because if I'm trying to prove, for example, that men and women are both equally capable of succeeding in a physics program, I can't say at the beginning, my department has a unique opportunity to prove that men and women can both equally succeed at a physics program. So already we're in a little bit of murky waters here, because they're already, the term we often use is priming the pump for the kinds of responses they're going to be getting. Like, they're already casting this in such a way that they know what kind of answer they're going to get. We want to know what parts of the federal government are most harmful to the American people. That's a really good premise. Like, that's kind of a 180 there. Like yes, please, by all means, let's find out what parts of the federal government are harmful to the American people. But it's at odds with this previous statement about reining in out of control spending. Like, which is this survey about? Is it about spending that you've already applied a evaluation to? Or is it about potential harm that you're trying to find out from me? So based on that, I'm already expecting two very different directions for this to take. I'm expecting there to be questions about spending, but I'm also expecting there to be questions about harm. In fact, maybe we should get a little note set going on here. So I'm expecting to see questions about spending and questions about harm. Let's keep that going in the background. I want to remember what I was looking for there. And should be prioritized for the chopping block. Again, this is already kind of leading, right? This is kind of already assuming a certain type of response or privileging a certain type of response. Because chopping block, like, unless you're talking about a literal chopping block, this is never used in a neutral manner. So already in the intro, we've got some issues here with how the survey is being framed, and we're not even at the questions yet. All right, this brief survey. Okay, I appreciate that it's brief. I appreciate that you want me to know I probably have time. A good principle is to always tell the respondent how much time you're expecting the survey to take. So that means you've probably given it to somebody, or you've taken it yourself, or you've had a colleague take it. You've timed it, you round that up. I don't see that here on the first page yet. No, I don't see that yet. Okay, so pro tip, just say, instead of saying brief, I mean, it's nice that it's brief, right? Right. That is nice. And I have to look at my progress bar over here. Yeah, it probably is brief, but give a time estimate, because brief could mean 5 minutes and it could mean 10 minutes. And I might have 5, but not 10. So you'll actually increase your response rate if you tell the respondent how much time it's going to take. To make your voice heard on the government's, oh, that is not a nice word. Because there are people, so this is a word, I'm not going to say it because I've really been trying to not use this word colloquially, because there are people who struggle with mental health issues, and when we throw around that word, it's not okay. But again, it's already kind of framing the type of response you expect to see, and you're potentially alienating folks who indeed could be harmed by the federal government. So let's work on toning down that language a little bit there, Heritage. Invasive reach over the American people. Invasive reach over. See, when I think invade, I think going in. I don't think going over. I'm a little unsure what they want me to imagine here. Okay, well, let's get to the actual questions here. Please complete your survey today. Today. Is there a time limit? Is there a deadline? Because I saw this yesterday. If there's an actual deadline, you should probably put the deadline. To make your voice heard. That's a little bit repetitive. I mean, make your voice heard is certainly encouraging, right? That is certainly a positive statement. And, you know, kudos to the survey writer for trying to center the voice of the respondent there. But having it twice is a little odd. Like you can cut down on the survey time by not repeating text. Okay, let's start this. Okay, we've got a ranking task. Is it ranking? Hang on. Please rank from 1 to 5 the following government departments and agencies on which should receive the most significant budget cuts first. Okay, let's try to unpack this sentence. So please rank. Rank to me suggests I'm going to put 1 at the top and 1 at the bottom and kind of fill in the rest. But it doesn't look like that's how I do that. This isn't a sliding scale. This is asking me to rate each department and agency. Right? So, I mean, maybe I'm splitting hairs on the wording here, but rank to me suggests an order. Rate suggests an evaluation. Also, I notice 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, to their credit, there are 5 items. So maybe I'm supposed to use only 1. Maybe I'm supposed to use each one once? No, it doesn't allow that. Okay, so the use of the term rank doesn't really match the format of the question. That could cause some potential confusion, and that's going to compromise the validity of the responses. Oh, I forgot to click got it on the cookies. Oh, you know what? I consented to cookies. There was no informed consent here. When you're giving a research survey, you are legally required to ask for the respondents informed consent. You're supposed to tell them what you're doing with the data. You're supposed to tell them how it's going to be used, how it's going to be stored. And then you're supposed to confirm that they are 18 years of age or older, or that they have a parent's permission. Do they have this down at the bottom? Oh, they don't. Okay, so this survey, big red flag, is immediately in violation of ethical research principles laid out in any university's institutional review board. Okay, so I do want to give the warning to folks who might have found this survey from this video. This is not obtaining your consent. And so we have no idea what they're doing with this data. So major red flag, always go through IRB, always get your informed consent together. Okay, we're in 10 minutes into this video and we haven't actually answered a question yet. But now I'm working through the kind of double negative on this. The following government departments and agencies, I think this on here means based on. It's a little unclear to me, but should receive the most significant cuts first. Okay, so there's kind of two qualifiers here, right? Most significant and first. First, I think, implies chronologically, but most significant implies significance. So they're tying together two scales here. You want your question to get one scale of information. If you're mixing the two scales, like, is somebody rating it highly because they think it should be first or because they think it should be most significant? So they're mixing the scales here. They're not actually addressing an actual research question here. They're kind of putting two things together here. So I want to rate it higher if I want more significant cuts first. So there's a little bit of a negative there, right? So higher rating gets lower. No, sorry. Higher rating gets more significant cuts. And then they do this. And here they flip it again. And they want 1 to be the highest and 5 to be the lowest. So 1 is highest for cutting and 5 is lowest for cutting, which means 5 is highest for keeping. Like there's 2 layers of double negatives in here. That's really confusing to read. Like, this is not going to be... Okay, I shouldn't make a judgment. If I were the researcher here, I would be incredibly concerned about the validity of the responses to this scale, especially given the fact that they're asking me to rank, but then it's a rating scale. The fact that it's most significant first, and then they introduce the idea of priority. So there's 3 scales now. Significance of the cut, timing, and priority. So there's like 3 questions wrapped up in here with a double negative scale. I would be very concerned for how this is interpreted. And none of this gets to this idea of harmful to the American people. Like, this is about, I think this is about spending. Yep, budget cuts. So they're addressing the spending, but they've already put this idea in my mind about things being harmful. If I can get my cursor to select, there we go. They put this idea in my mind about harmful to the American people, but then they're going back to the budget cuts with 3 different scales with a double negative. And oh, by the way, by the time I get to here on the screen, I might have forgotten what the 1 through 5 is. So like, what I would want to see here, instead of just a bare 1 to 5, 1 should say highest priority or most significant cuts or budget. 5 should say lowest priority, least significant cuts, last in the order. Like, do you understand what I mean? Like once you start to list out what each of the 1 through 5 means, you actually don't know what you're responding to, which is probably why they left it 1 through 5. Let's see. Environmental Protection Agency. I don't actually know. So this is going out to presumably all Americans. You know, they didn't ask for my proof of my citizenship. If I'm not in the United States, if I'm not a U.S. citizen, let's say I'm an, I don't know, Ukrainian citizen, could I fill this out? There was no check. There was no login. Maybe they'll filter it by IP, but what if I'm an American citizen living abroad? Or what if I'm a Ukrainian who's taken refuge in the United States? Like, how are they going to actually parse this by the respondents? Okay, well, let's continue. I don't know. Getting back to my so many tangents to go on. I'm not sure the average United States citizen knows fully well what the Environmental Protection Agency does. Do they? I don't know. Because, I mean, I work in the sciences. I have EPA stuff in front of me all the time. I sure know what it is. A thing that would be helpful here, if you're going to use an online survey, you could always make a link that goes to, the Wikipedia article for the EPA or the EPA website or a list of the accomplishments of the EPA. I don't, it might be nice if there was like a familiarity question of like, how familiar are you with the EPA? Me being completely familiar with the EPA, I'm going to rate that 5 because I don't want them to have any budget cuts at all. And that's another question, like, what if I don't want the EPA to have any cuts? Like, what does 5 mean? 5 means lowest priority. I don't want it to be on the list at all. Same thing with the FBI. Like, I mean, surely most people watch enough crime dramas to know what the FBI does. But do they know, for example, the difference between the FBI and the CIA? Or the FBI and the FTA or something? Like, I don't know. Like, it might be nice to get an idea of what level of knowledge your respondents have for this. Surely you would want to privilege or at least parse out the responses from the folks who know what the agency does and the folks who are less informed with it. Same thing with Department of Education. Like, does every parent know the Department of Education is there to ensure that their kids get their IEPs or ensure that their kids have a safe functioning school? I don't know. I'm definitely putting 5 on that as an educator. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Okay, so let's take this as an example. I'm really not sure what this does. I would have to Google it. I mean, it sounds like something to do with where people live. I would definitely want people to have places to live. Let's just do let's suppose I'm doing my due diligence as a United States citizen or survey respondent from somewhere, and I go to here, HUD helping you meet your housing needs. HUD provides housing, support, and uplifts communities. Let us guide your next steps to the right place. If I had any of that information on here, I'm definitely going to rate it a 5. Department of State. Oh gosh, that's an old one, isn't it? That's like OG cabinet level. Let's go double check what Department of State does. Ooh, logo pops up. Isn't that nice? U.S. Department of State. Leading America's foreign policy to advance the interest and security of the American people. I kind of don't understand why this gets called Department of State if it's foreign policy. Like, wouldn't Department of State refer to something about the states? Okay, maybe I don't know how the word is being used. Well, it looks like they helped me get a passport. They helped me with travel information, travel advisories. Yeah, that sounds great. I would love to be able to do all that stuff. Yeah, so anyway, I would be concerned if I were reading these responses. I would be concerned that not all of my respondents had a similar level of knowledge of these things, and it's not giving me any context for making that decision. Okay, well, that question was about spending. Surely the next question will be about harm to the American people. Do you support the following real-life uses of taxpayer dollars? Oh, this is back to spending again. $45 million for a diversity and inclusion scholarship in Burma. Is this a real thing? I guess it is. They said real life. That's kind of a weird way to say that. Like, I would expect a little more formality on a survey. But $45 million for a diversity and inclusion scholarship in Burma. I think I know where Burma is. It's Southeast Asia, right? Let's go find out where Burma is. Burma. Myanmar. Right. They make a joke about that on Seinfeld. Oh yeah, that looks gorgeous. Yep, Southeast Asia. There we go. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to support a scholarship there. Okay. This is more a grammatical thing. I don't know if this invalidates the data. This is a yes or no question, And then there's 3 degrees of response. So how would you describe your supportiveness of the following real life uses of taxpayer dollars? Um, Again, with the lack of information, it's really unclear to me what this program is. Like, what does it mean for there to be a scholarship in Burma? Is it a scholarship at Burman universities? Or is it a scholarship for Burma citizens to come to the United States for education? Also, the 45 million, what kind of scale are we talking about? Like, that's got to be housed within a program. What's the overall budget of that program? Are we talking like there's a whole government agency devoted to this scholarship and this is 100% of its budget? Or is this under Department of Education and this is a minuscule percentage? Like having that as just a number on its own is not really enough for me to make a reaction to. I will say this as a positive. They do give an odd number of responses to this question. Anytime you're giving a response scale, you're always going to give an odd number because you want there to be something neutral in the middle. But they don't really have a neutral option. Like, they got very supportive, somewhat supportive, and not supportive. So, and is not supportive like does that mean you don't want it, or does it mean I wouldn't have voted for it but I'm fine if it's there? You know what I mean? Like there really needs to be a positive and a negative. Not supportive to me could be interpreted as a neutral, and the fact that there's nothing here that says neutral suggests to me that not supportive might end up getting loaded with folks who would want to remove the scholarship, and for folks who would feel neutral and say, I don't really care one way or the other. So that's probably going to overload that not supportive. I would like to see, if there's going to be 2 degrees of positive, there really need to be 2 degrees of negative and a neutral. You always want an odd number. Really, Likert scales should have 5 options so that you have a neutral, 2 degrees of positive, and 2 degrees of negative. I'm very supportive of scholarships and very supportive of diversity and inclusion, so there we go. $3 million for girl-centered climate action in Brazil. Again, there's no definition of this. There's no description of what this is, what it's doing, what climate action means, or what girl-centered means, or what kind of scale 3 million is for. In fact, it doesn't even say over how much time the 3 million is spent. Is the 3 million being spent once a week? Is it being spent once a year? Is it being spent over the course of 10 years? Like the dollar amount as an extensive property not really helping communicate anything. So I'm going to say very supportive. 125 million to push critical race theory in public health policy. I don't know what push here means. That's a very vague statement, a very vague verb. Also, not everyone is familiar with what critical race theory is. I will say this. I have a PhD in theoretical condensed matter physics. I run network analysis on student responses to an open-ended survey. I teach computational physics. Like, I don't like to use the word smart, but if I were going to use the word smart, I'd say I was a smart guy. I took a 2-hour crash course in critical race theory. I am not smart enough to understand all the inner workings of critical race theory. There's a reason it's framed in law schools. There's a reason it's a thing that lawyers study. And your average American citizen, or anybody in the world apparently who just comes onto this survey, I can almost guarantee you doesn't have a well-articulated definition of critical race theory or working knowledge of it. Also, in public health policy, I don't know that a lot of folks are familiar with that term or what that means or what kind of impact that has on their lives. So I'm going to say very supportive, because if I'm not familiar enough with the thing, I don't want to vote against it. I don't want to express a lack of support for it. I want people to be able to do stuff that they believe is beneficial for other people. $280,000 for diverse bird group watchers. Okay, bird watcher groups. Sorry. It's interesting to me that they had this. Oh no, they haven't had a census scale. I wonder what order these are in. Because they're not going in order of increasing money. That would kind of make sense. They're kind of all over the place. Diverse bird watcher groups. It's $280,000. Yeah, bird watching's great. $3,267,000 to build a transgender health guide website meant to increase access to gender affirming care, also known as mutilation. Now, couple questions on this one. Is transgender here applying to the health, the guide, or the website? Like, that's a lot of words thrown together. Like, what does it mean to have a transgender website? Meant to, okay, now I'm starting to wonder about the use of these quotes. Like diversity and inclusion, they're putting in quotes here. I'm not sure why. Girl-centered climate action, I'm not sure. I'm starting to wonder if they're just pulling words from the solicitation, like increase access to gender-affirming care. Like, why does that need quotes? Are they pulling that from the whatever it is that they're looking at? Or are they somehow trying to cast dispersions on the thing using finger quotations? Right? Like, I don't know what the purpose of the quotation marks is. It's just getting confusing. Also known as mutilation. Who does the knowing there, right? Always avoid the passive voice. Who is the knower in that sentence? Who is the knower who is knowing the knowledge there? I don't know. So we're going to say very supportive because there is not enough information for this. I don't know how you spend $3 million on a website. Like that seems excessive. I don't know how that gets approved through any reasonable process. So I'm wondering if there's more than just a website there, right? Because building a website, I mean, how much money do you have to pay a developer to build a website? I'm wondering if they've got the wrong amount on there. I don't know. Sorry, I'm supposed to be commenting on the format of the survey. Do you believe the federal government needs to be responsible with taxpayer dollars and not spend more money than it takes in? Okay, I see we're almost at the end of the survey. And again, I want to point out that the preamble said they want to know what parts of the federal government are most harmful to the American people. I'm almost done with the survey. I haven't seen the word harm once. Maybe it's in the last three questions. Do you believe the federal government needs to be responsible with taxpayer dollars and not spend more money than it takes in? So this is really two questions. Do you believe the federal government needs to be responsible with taxpayer dollars? Sure. I mean, I don't want my government to be irresponsible. And do you believe the federal government needs to not spend more money than it takes in? So this is two questions, right? This is two questions. And so when people answer yes, no, or undecided, are they answering yes to just one? Are they answering no to just one? Like, you can't ask two questions. You're not going to get usable data. So I'm going to put undecided here because they're also not giving me a yes, no, no, yes option because it's two questions. You can't ask two questions. Do you support significant cuts to the federal budget? God, we're still on spending. We haven't talked about harm at all. To the federal budget to eliminate budget deficits and pay down the national debt. Again, two questions. Really, it's three. Support significant cuts. And who's defining what significant is? You've used significant a few times here, and you haven't told me what it means. Significant cuts to eliminate budget deficits and pay down the national debt. That's three questions. I got to put down undecided. Three questions. I can't answer three questions at once. Okay. Is there going to be any question about harm in this survey? Oh, I think there might be. Do you believe the misnomer will be an effective tool for eliminating excessive government spending? I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and think that this is really a question about harm because the answer is no. Because this misnomer has already done irreparable harm to scientists and the progress of science all across the United States. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe that last question lets me get away with talking about harm, but it's really ingenuine to say that we want to know something and then not ask any questions that are related to that something. We talked about the format of the questions was really off, but I think this is the biggest problem, is that they give a framing that never shows up in the actual questions. Okay, well, thank you for walking with me through this survey. Definitely some misguided design choices here. Definitely a mismatch between the framing and the questions. I have no idea what they're going to do with this data because, like I said, it did not check for my citizenship at all when I opened it. So if other folks from around the world end up responding to this, I'm pretty sure, well, even if they don't, I'm pretty sure the data from this is going to be pretty useless. So we'll keep an eye out, see what they do with this data. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.